Death of a Titan. Released by Jagex Limited on the 29th of March 2004, Runescape 2 was a popular, massively multiplayer online RPG based in a magical medieval setting. Both Jagex and Runescape received several awards for their game, including 3 Guinness World Records, one for having the most content updates since its inception, one for the largest aggregate game time, and another one for being the largest free-to-play MMO overall. However, when one logs in nowadays, Runescape has had a massive overhaul. Since its peak in 2007 and 2008, there has been much change. There are less players online, and the game is quite different from what it used to be. I will elaborate on how Runescape went from one of the most popular games to close to uninhabited in the space of a couple of years. Runescape became popular because of its simplicity. Back in 2007, each character had 23 skills to level. These skills could be combat related, like attack or defense, or related to gathering or processing, like fishing or smithing. For fishing, for example, in order to level up, one had to click a spot to fish. Each catch would yield experience, and enough experience would get you to the next level. Higher levels unlocked other fish that could be caught, which in their turn yielded more experience. Runescape was so simple because there was no skill needed by the player to catch the fish. You just needed enough time and motivation to keep doing the same devious task over and over again. Because there was no measure for how good one was at the game, people sought for other ways to gain recognition. If a player was rich, they would parade around with discontinued items. These were items of which only a set amount had been made, from which point they could only be bought from other players. After complaints from players that they had no way to show off their high levels, Jagex released skill capes. One could wear these capes if they had achieved the highest level in a certain skill. The game, however, was not only simple for players. As it only involved clicking, the game was also easy to automate with computer programs. Because the game was so large and in-game money and items was so important, people started to use programs to automate the process of leveling a skill to earn fast money. These programs were called bots.
The first type is a real-world trader. They will have long, incomprehensible names and will transfer all the money and resources they earn to a main account to sell them. The other type is the recreational bot, as I like to call it. They still play the game, but they prefer to not do the grinding aspect and leave that up to a computer program.
In late 2007, Jagex released a number of updates to counter real-world trading. They restricted free trade, making it impossible to transfer large sums of money to other accounts, and removed the only player versus player area Runescape had, the wilderness. There was now no safe method to give other people money, and thus real-world trading was effectively removed. The community responded with outrage. A significant amount of players was only in it for the PvP element, and riots occurred on several servers. Players used slogans like "We pay, we say," and "RuneScape is dead." Though many people saw this as a moment RuneScape jumped the shark, it continued to go strong for several more years. After community pressure at the end of 2012, Jagex released a poll to bring back the wilderness and free trade. 91% voted in favour. The start of February 2011, Jagex reinstated both, and thus everything was back to normal. In October of 2011, Jagex enthusiastically announced a new update that would wipe almost all botting accounts. They called the event Bot Nuke Day. Over the span of a week, almost 13 million bots were banned. These were both recreational botters and real-world traders. It included 40% of the player base and an unknown percentage of the active player base. In China and Korea, 99% of all accounts were banned. And this was a turning point. So many accounts had been banned at once that there were hardly people online. Before the update, most of the 144 servers were close to the 2,000 player maximum. After the update, they were struggling to fill even one world. Jagex never released statements if they anticipated the backlash, but the truth is that a large portion of the banned accounts paid monthly fees to them. Now that they had gone, Jagex had to implement another way of generating income. A few months prior to the nuke, Jagex had introduced a loyalty program to keep people in membership status. A few months after the nuke, they introduced the Squeal of Fortune. Through this update, players could buy experience and items with microtransactions. Ironically, Jagex had combated real-world trading because of the unfair advantage it gave to players who did not spend real money on the game. Their solution was maybe even worse. In late 2012, almost a year after the microtransactions had been introduced, Jagex released Runescape 3. Believing this would be the future of the game, they updated it to look more like newer MMOs. Spotting massively improved graphics and gameplay, they wanted to compete with the other heavyweights of the genre. By this time, however, they had lost so many of their old player base, there was no future left. Their old fanbase had loved the simplicity and quirkiness of it all. The old community did not want better graphics or minigames, let alone the microtransactions Jagex had to implement to keep the game alive after so many accounts had been banned. Apart from battling real-world trading, one of the arguments for banning free trade was that new players wouldn't get scammed by other players in-game. Jagex believed banning free trade in the wilderness would make it a fairer, safer environment for new players to explore. But the community didn't want to be governed. They wanted the feeling of being able to sniff out scammers and warn other people. They wanted to go on fun trips killing bots and keeping the game in shape themselves. RuneScape was run by the community, and they wanted to keep it that way. And that is why on the 22nd of February 2013, after almost 450,000 people voted in favour, Jagex released RuneScape 07, or Old School RuneScape, a client that was exactly as it had been 6 years prior. Jagex would continue to update RuneScape 3 and only do basic maintenance on the Old School client.
The game looked massively out of date, but the players didn't care. They wanted to govern the flawed game as a community, not be governed by Jagex. As of today, there are an almost equal amount of people online on both the old and new servers.